Greetings, it's me, Deathblade. I'm here with the first episode of the Deathblade podcast. I'm just going to go with calling it a podcast. Eventually, I might add an audio version somewhere, in which case it'll make more sense to call it a podcast. For now, it's the Deathblade podcast. Thank you for all your comments in my video introduction a few days ago. I saw the suggestions for different video content and I wrote them all down. I have a gigantic whiteboard that stretches out above my entire workstation here. So I wrote down the suggestions, and in the coming weeks we'll definitely get to some of those. There's going to be a Deathblade, baby Deathblade introduction, and I saw some requests for food stuff and all kinds of different things. So we'll be getting to those as the weeks come. And if you have more suggestions or comments, then please feel free to leave a comment or send me a message. I do get YouTube comments, but they go to a folder in my Gmail, and sometimes I miss them. And so the best way is to send me a message on Patreon, or leave a comment, or send me an email. By the way, I got a new T-shirt, a cool Lego T-shirt. Miss Madam Deathblade has been cursing me to buy some new clothes, and so I figured this would be a good opportunity. So I got a cool Lego T-shirt. Today, what I'm actually going to talk about is not one of those suggestions that came from the initial introduction video, but it's pretty relevant to what happened this week here on Patreon, which was I did that poll asking about the spoiler titles. Many of you said that you like the spoiler titles, but actually that was the minority by far. The majority of you really wanted to have the spoiler titles at the end of the chapter. Some even suggested having all of them at the end of the chapter. I saw kind of two comments, and I've seen comments about this in the past as well, about why the spoiler titles should remain at the top. Some people say that they're exciting and make you want to read the chapter. Some people say that in order to maintain, the artistic vision of Argun, the author, they should remain at the top. I'm going to talk a little bit about why I don't think that's a good argument for it. First of all, let me pull up a screenshot from my cell phone. This is the mobile version of Qidian, which is what I usually use to read the original Chinese version. As you can see, I know you can't read Chinese, but you can see how some of the chapters have that little lock next to them. What's that all about? And here, let me pull up also a similar thing on the from the website, the web version. Every single chapter that you read on Qidian.com, basically you pay for. You buy Qidian points, then you spend Qidian points to unlock every chapter that you want to read. There's a VIP program where it basically gets a little bit cheaper. And of course it's very cheap. It's like, I did the math a while back, I forget. It's like a cent or less than a cent or maybe a couple cents per chapter. So because of that, there's a few ways that you can look at it. First of all, there's definitely going to be people who maybe they fall behind and have to read several hundred chapters to catch up, and maybe they don't want to just to spend money on all those chapters, so they can kind of read to see where the story's going. Sort of how, like, if you watch a TV show and you don't want to catch up and you just jump back to the TV show, it would be kind of nice to be able to go read a summary of every chapter, and that's kind of what the table of contents is for most of these novels. Or for example, people who jump in halfway through and they don't want to read the entire novel, it's definitely possible to kind of go scan over the contents. Another thing that it does is, and let me pull up another screenshot from my cell phone. This is the mobile version of Qidian. As you can see, I forgot, sorry, this is in Chinese, but basically your reading rack that has all of the different books that you read, whatever is the latest chapter and that chapter's title is visible on the book. So it's also kind of like a little advertisement. For those of you who said that you like the chapter titles because they get you excited about the story, I think you're kind of onto something there. And I think that the chapter titles for Chinese web novels are actually kind of like comic book covers. Now, I'm not saying that all comic book covers are a spoiler of the content, but a lot of times the cover of the comic book will show you some stuff or give you a hint about what's going to happen, right? And that's exactly what these chapter titles are for. They're essentially to drive sales, or to help, or to drive sales, basically. I haven't had a chance to talk to Argun about it. The communication with him is limited to questions about the Chinese that we don't understand. By we, I mean myself and Ren Huaxing. If we can't figure it out, then we go to him. That happened recently. I don't know how many of you followed the chapter 1306 stuff. There was some stuff within that chapter that actually affected multiple chapters in the past, in which I had translated something based on a guess and a hunch, and in the past I was never able to confirm from Argon about it. After being able to confirm with him the meaning, then it became clear and everything made sense. So that's the communication with Argon. And one of these days, if I ever am able to sit down and have dinner with him or something, I'll definitely ask about the spoiler titles. And I'm pretty confident that he won't mind sticking them at the end, because the creation of those chapter titles is not intended to be part of the art of the story. I don't think it's more for sales. Okay, how are we doing on time? Wow, we're over 5 minutes already. I really want to keep these videos short, but there's one more thing I want to talk about, and let me pull up a screenshot here. This is from a comment on Reddit. Somebody asked me about a comment in chapter, or something from chapter 798. In this chapter, this is where Meng Hao and his parents reunite, and Fang Xiufeng, his dad, just like destroys a bunch of these immortal realm people, and Meng Hao asks about it, and then when Fang Xiufeng responds as to what they are, he says they're in the peak of the immortal realm, and they refer to themselves as Dao Lords. And I think this is kind of key that he says they refer to themselves as Dao Lords. The person asked, is that really Dao Lord the same term as the actual Dao realm level? And the answer is that yes, it is. It's the exact same word. Now, okay, again, I haven't talked to Argon about this. I don't talk to him about little tiny questions like this. Theoretically, one possibility would be that Argon just kind of came up with the term randomly at that time when writing the chapter, and then later sort of solidified the actual cultivation levels of the Dao realm. That's one possibility. But I think another possibility is that if you pay attention to the story as a whole, there's a theme that's been played out throughout the entire story. Maybe you noticed it, maybe you didn't. If you didn't notice it before, you'll definitely notice it going forward in the future. And that is that everybody in the story doesn't really understand the cultivation levels above them, and a lot of times they borrow from them the terminology, or they like reference them in ways that are incorrect. And I think this is probably one of those. In fact, there's even a guy I remember do you remember way back when Meng Hao first left the southern domain and he went to the Black Lands? He met some guy, and that guy was called Immortal Huang or something. I forget. He had a title Immortal, and he obviously was not immortal. I think that's another example of how this kind of thing happens in I Shall Seal the Heavens. Argon likes to do this thing where people misunderstand. One of the biggest misunderstandings that was clearly intentional was how he basically kind of trolled the audience into thinking that Meng Hao's mother was the resurrection lily or something like that, and then it turned out later that that was totally not the case, and he intentionally did that to kind of, in my opinion, and again, I haven't asked him about this, so we'll see, but I think he totally did that on purpose to kind of troll the audience and get them out of the mindset that everything is exposition in the novel, including the character dialogue, and that everything the characters say is true, because obviously what the characters say is not true. In fact, a lot of the time it's not true, maybe even the majority of the time. Alright, I went a little bit longer on this video than I intended. I'm going to end it here. Again, if you have questions or comments, please let me know, and I'll consider that for future content, and I'll see you next week.